based on the wreckage of the world. All right, so basically, all of the military ships and all of the military equipment has been left rotting for 800 years since the scream here. And I think that's probably why Bannon and the Federal Society is so ahead of everybody else militarily, is because they got here to Albin Bakheri, and they just they just took it. You know, there was probably maybe a cruiser or two, a couple frigates, a lot of patrol boats, and a ton of fighters, like an absolute massive ton of fighters, all here. Oh, and probably like the basically most of Bannon's Space Navy comes from here. You know, even if let's say one in every four ships had to be scavenged, or let's say you needed to take four ships and take all of those working parts and then add new stuff, like deck plating and all of that. As long as they could get, spike drives, computer systems, and that kind of stuff. And so the Bannon military isn't using ships that are, like modern day Navy ships. Clean, they use consistent systems, they're modular. All of these ships are Frankensteins. They're advanced warships for the time period. But, they might have a modern day nav system tied to an engine system from 800 years ago. So there could be some glitching there. There could be some things. But they're used to it. They've had 40 years of building these things. So I think probably this generation. So let's say every 20 years is a new generation. That seems pretty reasonable, right? Albany colonists arrive. Boom. That's minus 40 years ago. 20 years later, we have a new generation. They're used to scavenging. The scavenge is probably running low by 20 years later. So they're getting really good at, reusing stuff, like recycling. And they're also probably getting good at repairing things. They have got 20 years of education as to how to get these things working. And now, in this period, we have techs who are basically developing new technology. They're no longer just scavenging old world stuff and applying it to new stuff. They're creating entirely new technologies. The old ships, the stuff from 40 and 20 years ago, are probably breaking down. I mean, look at modern military naval ships. They'll use that stuff for 20, 30, 40 years. Look at the F-16. That thing is old as shit, and we still use it, but we're working on replacing it. So I think Albin Bakheri is where they go to research the next level of stuff. So it's going to be an entirely military world, and I think citizenship here is going to be a requirement. In order to live on Albin Bakheri, you have to be a citizen in the Federal Society. And this is the Federal Society's backup base. If you've ever read Starship Troopers, there was a place known as Sanctuary. It was away from all of the other worlds. Basically, no one knew how to get there except ship captains, and sometimes even then, maybe not. And they would go there to do all their restocking, to get their orders, and this is kind of going to be like that. Everyone's going to know where Albin Bakheri is, but if you show up in the system unannounced, like if you weren't on the schedule, you're probably going to have a bunch of patrol boats and a frigate or two showing up, like asking you, why are you here? Yeah, so they're the military central command. Right. The wind beneath the wings. Oh man, I need to keep up with chat. Sorry guys. Kit bashing, but with starships. Yeah! That's how you do it. How we roll. Alright. Now we got the Chromeo sector. Planet Sampras. Learn more about them. Oh, and yep, put that in there. Let's figure out about Sampras. They're xenophobes and they live in a desert world. I think this is probably the least controlled world. So it's it says like sealed treaty port, public rituals. I think that there's probably like a Fremen like religion here. So while everyone accepts the Federal Society, because of its open religious laws, the Federal Society doesn't really crack down on these guys. They have their own like tribal society using modern equipment where finding water is their big thing. Like you can't just make water, right? I think probably a large part of their culture here is bringing in asteroids made of ice and like ice fields in space. And you know how sometimes you hear about planets shooting meteors at other planets to blow them up? Again, that happened in Starship Troopers. Remember Buenos Aires? They're going to shoot the ice things into near orbit around the planet, and then they're going to harvest the ice, turn it into water, and then there's going to be this huge, like, shipping water up and down. This is like the trade planet. And the thing is the local people don't like. It says xenophobes. I think that they don't like non-federal societyists. Like, they don't trust anyone else. They've only ever known, since the Federal Society's come back, oh, no, got it. The Federal Society showed up and told them that the rest of the world is crazy. They've adopted, just like in Dune, they've co-opted the local religion, right? And kind of told them, like, everyone else out there can't be trusted. We're the only people that can be trusted. Excellent. So Sampras is a trade planet. Trade planet. Water harvesting. Their history is complete societal breakdown. After the Scream, tribal governments formed a desert religion. Religion co-opted by social scientists from the Federal Society brought the local populace up to tech level 4 and included them into the alliance. Locals distrust outsiders. Most trade, I think trade is off planet. So they take things from this planet and they sell them elsewhere, and they bring other stuff. So the locals or Federal Society merchants take things from this planet, sell them elsewhere, and bring new stuff back. People from other planets don't come to Sampras to sell stuff. Most trade is one way away from Sampras. And the reason for that is gonna be strict and unusual taxation laws for non-citizens or residents. So, maybe some guy shows up to sell something, and it turns out, because the water on his ship is only 70% pure, the government doesn't want him, breathing the same air and that kind of stuff. They don't want his water infecting the planet. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Maybe it's his clothes. Something about the local laws makes it so that the government can claim some or all of part of your cargo. There's probably religious items that are, if you, I don't know, maybe like, let's just say carrots. No, people are saying Kevin Bacon. So we're going to say probably, like, bacon is outlawed here. And so people who bring, like, bacon or pigs or animals with cloven feet or meat from any of those things, the government just, like, co-ops it, completely locks it down. And then through some shady back deals, they end up taking that stuff and, like, selling it to the rest of the Federal Society worlds because it's not legal on Sampras. But now that they have it, they don't really want to destroy it. because it's useful. So I think the government on Sampras is a little shady. I don't know that they're, it's not like religious officials are in charge, but I think that they use the religion as a way to get what they want. You can't collect rainwater in the U.S. because it's illegal. Well, if that's true, then I'm really screwed in this war of mine because I only collect rainwater in that game. Also, it turns out I'm terrible at it. I tried to stab some dude with a knife, and he punched me to death. So that was bad. Alright, so I think citizenship here is going to be also the Citizenship Republic. And this is a world in the Federal Society. Alright. Now we have the twin systems, it's one system with 2 planets. Soswan and Valgird. Now here's the important part. Valgird and Soswan play an extremely important role in the mythos that I've set up. So let's start with Valgird. Valgird is a quarantine world with a colonized population. And I'm actually going to say they are tech level 3. This is this is tech level 3. So Valgird is TL3 quarantined world under observation. Alright, so here's the history of Valgird. Valgird is under observation by its close neighbor. Get that name again. It's Anjali. Spy satellites, and what's going to happen is, imagine a satellite that projects an image down at the planet. So, the twin systems Ruta and Bega. No. Imagine a planet where you looked up at the sky and you didn't see anything on the world next to you, right? Let's say there are 2 worlds. One of them still has space-based tech. They're ahead of their sister planet, right? So we're actually going to talk about Anjali first, just to explain what's happening on Valgird. Anjali stayed tech level 3 after the Scream. They kept pretty well together. And what they did was they put up spy satellites around Valgird, which was like tech level 2, so it was reduced to like Middle Ages technology. Not that they didn't have, guns or anything. Those were probably still around the planet, but they didn't have the capability to manufacture new ones. And again, it's not like they didn't have rocket ships. They probably had space shuttles, and they probably had spike drive ships. But we're going to get to it. Anjali sets up a series of satellites that broadcast images down towards the planet that make that section of the sky look different. So the whole planet is covered with millions of satellites that are projecting an image of a sky that looks much the same as the one that they're currently looking at if the satellites weren't there. But there are no ships. The planet Anjali seems to be completely uninhabited. And yeah, so there's no reason for the people of Valgird to suspect there's anything going on. Now, so they got the spy satellites and they've got the World Cloaked. We're going to call it the World Cloak. Valgird is being socially directed by Anjali. Anjali scientists use Valgird as a social experiment. Valgird is also the home of twin AIs, Thorn and Thistle. Notice that Thorn is currently uncapitalized. Now, here's what's important. Thorn and Thistle were both break AIs on Valgird. And so the Anjali scientists eventually brought them up to space-based tech, or at least pre-space tech. So like 1950s type stuff. They have rockets, but they can't reach space. They've got radios, but the radio signals off planet are being blocked. Um, they have probably, let's say, democracy, right? That's something that happened around that time. They have guns. They probably have some stuff that we haven't invented yet, and they probably are lacking stuff that we have invented. So, they have, because they have AIs on their planet, they probably have advanced computing. But they're lacking, like rocket fuel. They don't have the combustibles or the nuclear materials to reach space. So what happens is they have these twin AIs introduced by the Anjali scientists. So Anjalians are directing this world. They are the government because they literally take like rocket ships and spike drive ships like to the poles of the world and like land and then like take regular ships or aircraft or whatever to move around the world, and using their advanced social sciences and technology, they've been directing the world's so they are the Illuminati, literally the Illuminati. They've directed the world's growth. And so they really wanted to introduce AIs. So now, imagine a 1960s scenario where everyone has, so-called nuclear family. Like two parents and two children. There's radio, there's television, color television, but there's also smartphones and computers, like really advanced computers, like almost as advanced as our current day stuff. And then there's AIs, and they're braked AIs. Thorn and Thistle. They're like brothers or sisters. I don't know. AIs don't really have genders technically, so they're siblings. But one of the scientists decides, let's take the brake off of Thorn. Thorn goes insane and eats Thistle. So now we've got one AI that's unbraked, that's in every electronic device on the planet. Why is this a problem? Because the Angelians have a spike drive ship on the planet. The AI uploads itself to that. It now has more computing power than ever and escapes the system. Why is that important? Because the worlds of the systems Koru, Asgard, Aziz, and Phejos are all controlled by the AI Thorn Thistle. Thorn Thistle is like the primary badass villain of this sandbox. We'll talk more about Thorn Thistle later, but the important part to recognize is that it came from this world, from the Sasan sector, and it has now spread to a 4-world empire, which it controls using infestation and computer systems and military force. And each of the worlds that it controls are run by a copy of itself. So there's a prime copy of Thorn Thistle rolling around in the ship that the first campaign was named after, the Calum Gladium, the Sky Sword, which is a tech level 5 carrier. It's a super advanced alien technology fighter carrier. It goes between the planets and talks to its copies. Each copy has developed its own society and has its own... there's a society, I think, among the AI on one of the planets that's like devoted to psionics, and another that's devoted to human eugenics, and another that's devoted to pure military force. So each planet has its own small... well, not small. Each planet that the AI controls has its differences, and the AI's copy on that planet has become different because of that. Anyway, that was a lot of talking about that. So, Valgerd is technically a member of the Federal Society. What's important to realize is Anjali still has the world under quarantine. But those who excel are informed of the truth and are given offers to become citizenship. And this world is an unknowing member of the Federal Society. So they don't know that there are other planets or even spaceships around. All they know is that this planet was once ravaged by an AI that escaped its bonds. And for the last 40 years, they've been attempting to recover from that. Now we talk about Anjali. These guys are some crazy motherfuckers. Anjalians are Area 51. There is something going on here. And that is, they are social experimentators. Also, they have an exchange consulate. So, here's some more pre-screen info for you. When humanity began to spread out using the jump gates and the spike drives, the local government of Earth tried to control them and couldn't. And the different planets and colonies tended to fight because people fight over stuff. And so a neo-Buddhist organization called Prosperity Buddhism formed something called the Exchange of Light, which is a completely neutral organization that did three things. It established a currency. So a credit at the exchange is worth as much in one planet as it is in another. So even if a cow on one planet is worth a lot, and a cow on another planet, because it's a planet made of cows, or I should say a planet full of cows, cows are essentially worthless there, because they have so many of them. But they're all going to be worth, let's say a cow on one planet is worth 10 credits, and it's worth 1 credit on another. You're still going to have the credits, you know? Your credits are going to be worth the same no matter where you go. It's the fundamental banking system, is the exchange. And because this sector has an exchange consulate, that's going to change the way that the sector is viewed. The reason why is number 2. Not only did they provide stable banking, they were neutral arbitrators for governments. So if you had a problem, they would step in and help you, but they wouldn't favor either side. Even if one side was Mother Teresa and the other side was Hitler, they would still neutrally approach it because of their Zen Buddhist philosophy. They would not favor either side. That was not liked by some people, and that was well respected by others, as mentioned in the book. And from your own viewpoint, you probably have your own opinion on something like that. The third thing they did was pass messages. There is no faster than light communications. So ships would carry messages. So exchange consuls, what they would do is they would make it so that ships, when they're leaving the sector, get a full download of all waiting messages. So let's say 1 million people have messages they want to send out somewhere. All those messages have the source code, where they've come from currently, and where they're going, so the departing code. And they're all encrypted, so they can't be cracked. You jump to the next planet, all right? The exchange there sends a query. The black box of exchange messages that has something stopping on this planet, everything downloads to the local exchange console, and they send a new upload. Now that the messages are there, anything stopping on that planet gets downloaded to the planet and deleted. Anything that's going onwardly now has its source code updated to say it's coming, it came from planet A, now it's on planet B, still needs to get to planet C. And so it's a Pony Express thing, and as you might suspect, with multiple ships moving at multiple speeds, the same message will arrive at an area many times, and the exchange console just basically, keeps everything updated. Here's what happened with Anjali. There is an exchange consulate that is basically a space station. Exchange consulate space station. When government fell apart, the consulate survived in space. I just want to put a dot there, in space. After 400 years, let's say 400, years, the consulate broke protocol and took control of Anjali using its social science. They infiltrated the government, and eventually, after, let's say 20, 30, 40 years, they accepted the populace was in a position. Is this game less complex than D&D? Well, For the players, yes. For the GM side, it's slightly more complex. You can find out for yourself, however, Skogalas. You can, again, if you just Google Stars Without Numbers, free edition, you can get the free copy of it and follow along with me. I think it's actually easier than, let's say, Pathfinder on the player side, definitely. But I'm setting up a sandbox, so, there has to be a lot of places for players to go. So the consulate broke protocol and is taking control of Anjali. Now, after it's prepared, Anjali experiments on Valgard as the consulate once did on them. More importantly, Anjali is the first place Bannon Spike Drive ships visited. So, the world of Bannon, which as we've established is the head of the Federal Society, had the technology to make spiked ships before anyone else. And they jumped to the Anjali sector and made peace with the Anjali. Well, and they jumped to the Saswan system, made peace with the Anjalians, and basically hammered out a contract that said, we're not going to mess with Valgard. And the Bannon government continued jumping to different planets like Albin Beheri. They jumped to Sampras. But in order to unite these things, they used the exchange consulate and the protocols from it to set up a new government. And those protocols have now gone across the whole sector. As Bannon has spread its influence, everyone has basically accepted the exchange. And so there's now a new exchange consulate on Anjali. Like, the exchange that they had been running got corrupted because it took over a planet, which is not neutral. Now, they've basically seceded that space station. It's become like an ISS. It's now, it's back to its roots. It's still got all the documentation. It's got all the, like the prayers. It's got all the, protocols. The new, let's call it, the government on Anjali is called the New Prosperity. Because they're prosperity Buddhists. And only members of that religion oh man, I'm spelling this wrong, religion can become citizens. So it's even harder to become a member of the Federal Society on Anjali. But the space station is now an actual exchange consulate once again. It is neutral in all things. It doesn't owe its existence to the planet Bannon or the Federal Society. And it's the head of the banking system for the entire sector. And so their allegiance is Federal Society, Overlord of Valgard, location of exchange headquarters. Boom. That only took almost an entire hour, and we've got these 5 planets hammered out. However, these are the most important 5 planets. The rest of these, we're going to go a little faster. We can learn more about them later. So let's close this up. Let's talk about AIs. You know what? Let's talk about Racina. Racina is going to be an interesting place. There is, I know it says planet here, but I thought instead it's going to be an asteroid belt. So Racina asteroid belt. Its purpose is that it is a trade hub. Located entirely in space. So imagine like a caravan in space. Imagine thousands of asteroids. Each one is its own government. And so, asteroid 6671 has a food production center. And it has trades with asteroid 3317, which creates oxygen. So each place might have between 1 and 100 people on it. And these asteroids have both spike drives and non-spike drive, like rocket ships. And there's just this constant stream of shit